President Buhari and Moroccan King discussed strategic development initiatives.
COVID-19 violation. Task force clamps down on some public facilities in Abuja.
Market, the UTC market and the Mock Plaza be shut down until they comply.
Newly appointed service chiefs on operational visit to Northeast.
There's going to be a new focus on the operation.
Today we shall discuss curbing frequent industrial actions in Nigeria.
Now, since 1945, when the noticeable strike took place in Nigeria, various groups, associations, and unions have been embarking on industrial actions across different sectors of the economy. Oftentimes, it is as a means of pressing home their demands for improved condition of service in terms increase in wages or correction of certain anomalies affecting the workplace.
That's right, Juma. We've had industrial actions, as you indicated, by various groups, both in the public and private sectors, oftentimes arising from one disagreement or the other. And amongst the champions of the industrial actions have been the Nigeria Labour Congress, Trade Union Congress, and of course, in recent times, some of the affiliate unions themselves, say in the education sector, have also taken to industrial actions. And we see that in the Academic Staff Union of Universities, the non-academic staff union of universities, as well as the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, among others.
You know, the health sector is another to have also experienced regular industrial action. If it's not the resident doctors, it is the Nigerian Medical Association or Nigerian nurses and midwives, among others related associations.
That's right. You also have technologists, medical technologists, lab technologists who've also gone on strike. Now, the private sector is certainly not left out of the strikes, as we have seen tanker drivers, that's the same members of NOTU, the Road Transport Union workers, Pengasan itself, and Nupeng, and electricity workers have also had their fair share of industrial action in a bid to get the attention of their employers or of the government.
And recently, the called off strike action by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, lasted a whole 9 months. Who can forget that, you know?
Certainly nobody can not forget that. Now, these actions often paralyze activities in the various sectors with attendant consequences ultimately on the nation's economy.
Exactly, and experts have identified policy inconsistency, poor remuneration, low level of motivation, unfair treatment, poor application of collective bargaining, and violation of legislations as some of the factors responsible for industrial actions in Nigeria.
Well, we never can tell who is next on the line, but some unions plan to embark on fresh strikes. One would often wonder why unions would appear to prefer industrial actions to press home their demands. And one should also ask, why do employers and the government often do the needful only after long periods of strikes? And how might these strikes be mitigated in order to enhance productivity and ultimately grow the economy? What are the best ways to deal with industrial matters before they get out of hand? These are some of the issues we intend to focus on in our conversation segment today as we discuss curbing frequent industrial actions on Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo. Thank you for tuning in.
And I am Juma Yusuf, welcoming you to Good Morning Nigeria. We are live on the network service of the NTA. As usual, we have our complimentary segments, including newspaper review, business and orders. But now, let's join Tessie Omere for the Good Morning News. Good morning, Tessie. Looking good.
Thank you, Jumay. Good morning, Kingsley and Jumay. Good morning and welcome to the Morning News. President Muhammad Buhari and the Moroccan leader King Mohammed have discussed joint efforts towards realization of strategic development initiatives, including Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline project and a fertilizer production plant. The heads of state in a telephone conversation welcomed the positive and dynamic bilateral relations between the two nations in critical economic sectors since the King's visit to Nigeria in 2016 and President Buhari's return visit to Morocco in 2018. President Buhari and King Mohammed expressed determination to carry out as soon as possible the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline project and construction of a fertilizer production plant in Nigeria. President Buhari, who spoke with the Moroccan king from his country home in Daura, Katsina State, thanked him for his country's support in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism, as well as education through scholarships and training. Newly appointed Chief of Defense Staff Major General Lucky Irabo says they have come with renewed vigor to address the lingering insecurity, assuring Nigerians that military operations will receive a boost for a quick resolution of the conflict and the restoration of peace. The CDS stated this when he led the newly appointed service chiefs on an operational visit to Maiduguri, the Borno State capital.
There's going to be a new focus on the operation, and I would like to assure the general public that the team spirit that exists amongst the troops in the theater is what will be fostered to meet the operational objectives.
43,000 personnel of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps have been deployed into the Agro Rangers unit aimed at achieving food sufficiency across the nation. The additional reinforcement came to the fore at a media briefing by the Acting Commandant General Kelechi Madu.
Our men of the Agro Rangers have been restoring confidence to the farmers. And these farmers have started going back to their farms because they escort them to the farms in the morning and lead them back in the evening.
And a meeting to review and adopt the committee's work on the twin increase of premium motor spirit and electricity tariff has resolved to meet in 3 weeks. This is to enable the organized labor to study the recommendations submitted by the committees. The Committee on Electricity Tariff is yet to finish its work on technical report, which is expected in a week's time.
The Committee on Petroleum Pricing have finished their work. They have sent in the reports. We received the report and adopted the reports. So Labour asked for some time to go and subject the reports to their various organs. It's a technical report. We are coming back at the end of 21 days after Labour has taken time to look at the report, and I'm sure we will get a landing on the matter.
Is there any hope of new templates by the end of 3 weeks?
Yes, already the committee has suggested, made some recommendations, far-reaching recommendations, which I believe are quite acceptable. But, well, it all depends on Labour.
We accepted the report as a working document. So we have gone through the report and we found out that there are some elements in the report that certainly we need to interrogate the report very well. Because part of the report is what we refer to as the regulation, but which is based on import-driven deregulation, which means that some of the variables, that is exchange rate, inflation, and the price of crude oil at the international market will continue to drive the process of price modulation. And we thought that that may be a cycle that will not have an end, and therefore we need to do a broader consultation and come up with something that we think can be beneficial both to Nigerian workers and Nigerians as a whole.
Correspondent Emmanuel Anyimero reports that Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, as well as the organized labor, are hopeful that 2021 will bring luck to Nigerians instead of challenges. And health professionals in the country have been urged to eschew tendencies that narrow their interest but concentrate on qualitative health care delivery for Nigerians as the core value for their calling. Senate President Ahmed Lawan made the appeal at a one-day public hearing and presentation of memoranda on 5 health-related bills by stakeholders.
The purpose of this engagement today is to articulate the views of stakeholders and the general public on these bills with a view to coming up with a balanced legislation that will be acceptable to all.
And for the different professionals, please emphasize on your quality and be the best you can be.
There are issues of management, there are issues of understanding, and they require a lot of enlightenment.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has confirmed 676 new cases of COVID-19 in 18 states and the FCT. In the new figures, Lagos has 227 new infections, Rivers 73, Niger has 69, Plateau recorded 56, FCT has 50, Kano with 44, Oyo 43, Ogun State has 27 and Gombe has 18 new cases. Others are 15 in Ondo, 10 each in Enugu and Osun states, 8 in Cross River and Edo states, 7 in Nasarawa, 4 in Bauchi. We recorded 3 in Kaduna, while Ekiti and Zamfara states have 2 cases each. So far, Nigeria has 131,918 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 106,275 were treated and discharged, while 1,607 deaths recorded. And Nigeria is now expecting 16 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines this month against the 100,000 Pfizer doses earlier envisaged. PTF Chairman Boss Mustafa at the national briefing says increasing the first batch of COVID-19 vaccine is necessary towards achieving vaccination of 40% of Nigerians this year as the second wave of the pandemic rages across the world.
By the time the West vaccinates its people, there will be heavy restrictions of even movement across the globe. So we must try as much as possible to get ourselves on course with vaccination.
The full cooperation of state governments will be critical with regard to supporting remuneration of vaccinators and smooth running of the operation.
The information out there that the COVID-19 vaccine contains harmful elements that alters the DNA is patently false.
And meanwhile, the popular Wuse market in the FCT has been closed indefinitely for non-compliance with the Coronavirus Health Protection Regulations 2021, signed recently by President Muhammad Buhari.
I've been arrested for not putting on face mask.
The judge, in her wisdom, after seeing what transpired here today, that's the judge Idayat Akoni, she actually gave a very strong ruling that 3 key areas of default as the Wuse market, the UTC market and the Mock Plaza be shut down until they comply.
And that concludes the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Jumwe after this break. Thanks for watching.
My dear party members, there comes a time when all good people must not only speak, but rise up and get involved in the task of improving their society. The need has never been greater than now for all Nigerians to actively contribute to the all-important task of nation building by bringing about good leadership and governance. For most citizens, their greatest weapon is their vote. Register now for your party and register when the time comes for elections. Political parties are the main vehicles under our laws through which citizens can participate in the ideals and practices of our democracy. As we have seen happening around the world, good citizens join political parties and use them to bring about the changes they desire. I am therefore endorsing the nationwide membership registration and the revalidation exercise embarked upon by our party, the All Progressive Congress. I call on patriotic Nigerians to come out during the exercise, which starts on the 25th of January, and avail themselves of the opportunity to join the APC. Thank you, and may God bless our country.
Dear customer, link your Airtel number to your national identification number today. Here are easy ways you can do it. Dial *121*1# on your Airtel line and follow the prompts on the screen. Type in your 11-digit government-approved NIN number. You will receive a confirmation message to confirm your entry. You can also visit www.airtel.com.ng/NIN to link your phone number to your NIN. If you do not know your NIN, simply dial *346# to get it. No stress, no wahala.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Fellow Nigerians, the opportunity we've been waiting for is here. The ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, has commenced membership registration and revalidation exercise.
This is why the chairman, APC Mobilization and Sensitization Committee for Youths, Women and People Living with Disabilities, His Excellency Alhaji Yahaya Bello, the Executive Governor of Kogi State, is calling on all Nigerians, especially youth, the Sorosoke generation, to register and join the APC in the party's membership registration and revalidation exercise that has already commenced.
The exercise is currently ongoing at all polling units across the country, beginning from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily.
For more information, visit our website at www.officialapc.org.
APC is the only party that offers Nigerian youths the best political platform to achieve their dreams of a prosperous nation.
Join us to move Nigeria forward.
I am Governor Yabelo of Kogi State, Chairman, Youths, Women and People Living with Disabilities Mobilization and Sensitization Committee of the APC Membership Registration and Revalidation Exercise 2021, and I approve this message.
I bring you wonderful news. The village headmaster is coming back to your screen. Mo wiri abi mi o wiri.
Teacher Dubois, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Teacher Dubois, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Ọmọ onírẹsì ti dé.
Ajebo na better school for last meeting. Not be all this on a rugged school for Ijabi. I don't know for you.
It's called Oja Village. Kadesi. We know Haki at all.
And I know that even you too, you are getting a lot of orders. Hey, we are trying, Shao. Sweep her leg out. She was standing there. Sweep it.
I love you so much.
And how did I give you the impression that I was interested in that position?
50-year anniversary.
You mean anniversary?
I mean, I talk with that now. Not for me. Not for me because of Pamio.
Thanks for joining us. Debt Management Office offers for subscription 2 and 3 years saving bonds at 1,000 per unit as Capital Market Experts speaks on Nigeria's stock exchange performance in January 2021. Let's join Kunle Ade for details.
Information from the Debt Management Office states that the 2-year bond with February 10, 2023 as due date will attract an interest rate of 4.2% per annum, while that of 3-year with February 10, 2024 as due date will attract an interest rate of 5.2%. In another development, a professor of capital market, Uche Uwaleke, has described as a great feat for Nigeria following the nation's capital market emergence as the best performing stock exchange in Africa after closing the month of January 2021 on a positive note.
A positive development for us in Nigeria, and is a continuation of the bullish trajectory that began about the last quarter of 2020. You recall that the stock market was about the best, was actually the best in 2020, posting a return that's in excess of 50%. That's talking about global performance, and that has also continued in the month of January. Again, we know that with 5.3%, that's about the best in Africa. Bloomberg has already adjudged it the 7th in the world and the best in Africa. So it's positive news for for the market in Nigeria, and of course, it's a reflection of growing investors' confidence, in our market. And remember too, the driving factor for this performance has been the favorable policies, especially the monetary policies of the central bank.
And let's see the closing figures of the stock exchange for the first trading day in the month of February 2021. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Many thanks, Kunle Adeyeye, for the business package. Next for us now is newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer Bayo Toby is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Jomai. Good morning.
See you.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
That's right. Bayo, let's take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper, and we'll start from above the name flag. Banks non-performing loans rise to 1.5 trillion naira. Security agencies will enforce jail terms against COVID-19 violators. That's according to the Presidential Task Force. Governor asks federal government to begin oil search in Sokoto Basin. NIN, telcos, and minister meet. Turnout rises by 40%. And you can see the COVID-19 update there. Fatalities now above 1,600. Zamfara fumes as PTF lists 5 COVID-19 high-risk states. Zamfara fumes as PTF lists 5 COVID-19 high-risk states. Presidential Task Force warns Nigerians against visiting 5 northern states. We've been sending samples to Abuja. They are returning negative. That's according to Zamfara. Lagos leads as Task Force identifies 22 high-burden local government areas. The photographs there are from the University of Abuja with the headline, Uni Abuja preaches peace as students protest mismanagement. Buhari, Atiku, governors and others mourn as ex-minister Momo dies. That's Prince Tony Momo. Details on page 30. 5 killed in Kaduna communities and NAF pounds bandits hideout. With state police, Amotekun won't be necessary. That's according to former President Obasanjo. Gusau Varsity Vice Chancellor, that's the former Vice Chancellor actually, arrested for alleged 260 million naira contract scam. That's page 30. And on pages 4 and 5, Katsina court orders remand of 30-year-old for raping an impregnating teenager. Content. IG risks imprisonment as court summons police boss. Page 7.
Wow. And now from the Daily Trust newspaper, just below the masthead, we have Governor Abiodun invited me to sack headsmen. That's coming from Boho. You find details on page 26. Southeast governors ban open grazing. Details on page 6. Bandits kill 3 as mob frees suspects in Kaduna. You find all that on page 6. And the bold headlines there we see FG's directive on COVID-19 flouted in states. With riders, 100 people sentenced in Abuja, 19 in Edo. IGP orders clamp down on violators. Kogi declared high risk. Persuasion key to observing protocols. That's attributed to experts on COVID-19. And you see the picture story there. Violators of COVID-19 protocols paraded before a mobile court in Abuja yesterday. You find all these details on page 33 and page 5. Going down, Daily Trust newspaper, IGP Adamu meets senior officers. Hints on exit. With a rider, there will be no vacuum. That's attributed to the presidency. At the bottom plate of the Daily Trust newspaper, just like Kingsley, my colleague, read, Tony Momo dies at 82. Buhari, Lawan, Obaseki mourn. 8 kidnapped orphans, 4 others freed. Find details on page 29. Rape. Court jails man for life. Another backs 21 years in Jigawa. Page 29. All the details is there. Bio.
Thank you, Jumai. Let's start on the sad note. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed deep grief on the death of Prince Tony Momo. He is reported to have died at his residence yesterday at age 81. The journalist, lawyer, and author of Letter to My Countryman was an editor, manager, administrator, and president and trustee of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Born Suleiman Momo, he was the 163rd child of King Momo of Auchi. President Muhammadu Buhari says Prince Tony Momo stood by him through thick and thin, stressing that his brand of loyalty is rare in politics of today. In politics, he was chairman, media and publicity of All Nigeria's People's Party in 2003, chairman, Congress of Progressive Change in 2007, and contributed tremendously to the formation of All Progressive Congress. The president has condoled the Auchi Kingdom, where he held the title of Yarima Auchi. He was also a member of the board of Nigerian Press Council, and when the Newspaper Proprietor Association took the federal government, Ministry of Information, the Press Council to court, he was the chairman of the committee set by the House of Representatives to reconcile the differences between the two agencies. In fact, the proposal, which was known as Tony Momo proposed bill, is still at the National Assembly waiting passage to ensure that regulation of the newspaper industry is done. May his soul rest in peace. Coming to COVID-19.
Yeah, just before you leave the story of Prince Tony Momo, I mean, it's clearly Prince Tony Momo was a media icon in this country, and he was a man of many parts and many firsts. Let's also underscore that. He was an editor of Daily Times. Daily Times, for the younger generation who may not know, was Nigeria's largest newspaper conglomerate at the height of its glory. Of course, the government eventually took over Daily Times and also eventually sold Daily Times. He became Minister of Information in 1986 and was there until 1990. Tony Momo was amongst the group of students from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, who were studying mass communication, and because of the outbreak of the Civil War, couldn't complete their studies at Nsukka, and then were transferred to the University of Lagos. In fact, they were then the pioneer students under UNESCO funding that also led to the creation of the mass communication department, and then graduated, of course, thereafter in 1967. Now, Tony Momo is also perhaps the first journalist, graduate journalist, I would say, to have also studied law, again at the University of Lagos. If you If you recall, he did the program at the University of Lagos, and I recall some of the lecturers in the law faculty, were often very proud of him. And so Tony Momoh never hesitated to defend press freedom whenever the occasion arose. Bayo, I'm sure you were familiar with this, the clash that he had with the Senate of the Second Republic. Joseph Wires and others had summoned him, and of course he then went to court to seek to defend the right of a journalist under the provisions of the 1979 Constitution to hold those in government accountable. But whether or not you could then fail to disclose the source of information was one that, of course, the courts, the court of first instance said yes. I mean, you couldn't compel, but on appeal, I think it was indicated that it wasn't a right that was guaranteed for you to refrain from disclosing your source, which means that, yes, you refrain from disclosing your source, but you could also face the penalty. In this case, there will be some pain for doing that, which is one of the things that journalists, of course, face from time to time. So Prince Tony Momoh, age 81, it was a live wire of the Nigerian media. I mean, so rest in peace.
Amen. In fact, when journalists lament that they don't have press freedom as prescribed for in Section 39 of the Constitution, he laughs and says that the whole of Chapter 2 gives the press tremendous amplitude anywhere that you can have in the world, and that is what he insists makes the press the fourth estate of the realm.
That's right, Bayo. All right.
We are now going to COVID-19. The Presidential Task Force has appealed to the Christian Association of Nigeria that they should tell Christian adherents that COVID-19 is real, and the only thing that can for now save anybody is when people are vaccinated. And secondly, we must adhere strictly to COVID-19 protocols to be able to survive that. The Chairman Presidential Task Force, Boss Mustafa, emphasized that to the leaders of Christian Association of Nigeria that recent surge in cases and death across the country has led to about fatalities of about 34% since December. And therefore, we are appealing to you to use this occasion to appeal to adherents of the Christian faith to adhere to COVID-19 protocols. But last week, the 57th week of the pandemic, we had as many as 9,955 new cases. On Sunday, we had 685 in 16 states. Yesterday, 667 in 21 dates, 21 deaths. We are now having a total of 131,918. Still on COVID-19, the Police High Command has ordered full enforcement of COVID-19 protection activities as ordered in the Executive Order of 2021. All Assistant Inspector Generals of Police of the 17 police commands and Commissioner of Police in 36 states and FCT have been directed to ensure compliance. By implication, if you are found not wearing mask in public places, you stand to be arrested and to be prosecuted. In another development, the FCT Task Force on COVID-19 shut down Wuse Market yesterday and also shut down UTC Market as well as Mog Plaza. In all, 115 persons were arrested and arraigned before mobile calls, and they were fined for violating the COVID-19. Meanwhile, the story that was read earlier on, that Zamfara State is protesting, this was because the Presidential Task Force had declared 4 states in the northern states as being very unsafe for COVID-19. They include Kogi, which all of us know has no status as far as COVID-19 is concerned. But others are Yobe, Zamfara, Jigawa, and Kebbi. Zamfara has protested because they contend that of all the test results they have sent to the NCDC, they have all returned negative, and therefore the governor is saying Zamfara is COVID-free.
Kogi is not testing. That's what the PTF is saying.
Yes.
Declared high risk.
And Kogi is not testing. And just to underscore how important all of this is, because the Kogi governor was reported to have said that the vaccines are intended to kill people. Yesterday, something happened in South Africa at the OR Tambo International Airport. That's in Johannesburg. South Africa has the highest caseload of COVID-19 on the African continent. They also have the variant of it, different from the mainstream, and they have also recorded the most fatalities. They received their first consignment of vaccines yesterday, and President Cyril Ramaphosa was amongst those who were at the airport to receive the cargo. It was raining. That underscores the importance that has been attached to the fact that you have to protect your people. Get them vaccinated in the first instance, observe the protocols that are required to deal with this. And yet, in some quarters, we keep hearing some of these ignorant proclamations that COVID-19 doesn't exist and we wear a face mask, and so on and so forth. And this has been encouraged. Governor Kowa is a medical doctor.
Yes.
And he has harped on the fact that, look, COVID-19 exists.
At the Governors Forum, he was emphatic that this is a scientific thing and COVID-19 is real. He emphasized that at the Governors Forum, and he was apparently frowning at his brother governor for actually campaigning that if you take vaccine, it is going to kill you. He was actually alluding to the unfortunate incident that happened in Kano with the Pfizer vaccine for polio. And apparently he's mixing all the facts. By profession, he's an accountant, so he does not have any specialty as regards COVID-19 to make those kind of pronouncements. Even Ghana, where it was shown on the social media with the president also raising alarm about vaccine and apprehension, Ghana yesterday received COVID-19 vaccines, and the president
they intend to vaccinate 17 million persons in Ghana. That's their target.
Yes. That's their target. Well, Bayo, thank you so much this morning.
You too,
yes, well, we can't take the editorial. Thank you so much. We'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation on carbon frequent industrial action will begin.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
In my house, we may look alike, but we are very different individuals. My adorable twins, they look so alike, but they don't like wearing the same things. And my little man, I had to find out the hard way because I've been trying to teach him my way. He loves to learn his own way because doing things his way is more fulfilling. Everybody believes their way is best. That's why Golden Penny Pasta is our favorite meal, because due to its non-stickiness, it allows me to satisfy everybody just the way they want it.
Golden Penny Pasta, made with durum wheat, is tasty, nutritious, a source of protein and fiber, and non-sticky. So you can cook, serve, and eat your pasta just the way you like it. Go on and enjoy your Golden Penny Pasta the way you want it. With Golden Penny Pasta, your way is best.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria, pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Smartphone Network.
Welcome back, and to begin our conversation on curbing frequent industrial actions, let's take this background report put together by Abdusalam Jibrahim.
In Nigeria's recent past, industrial actions have been major features, with different associations and unions across various sectors employing strikes, usually as a last resort, to press home their demands for issues relating to wage increment, better welfare and working conditions, among other labor issues. Unions such as the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, Nigerian Medical Association, among others, have embarked on industrial actions on various occasions. Experts maintain that aside from reducing productivity, strikes also paralyze activities in various sectors, with attendant consequences on the nation's economy. A major sector that has witnessed incessant strike action across all tiers is the educational sector. This sector has witnessed series of strike actions, especially tertiary institutions, which often cause huge setback in the country's educational sector. Just recently, in December last year to be precise, the Academic Staff Union of Universities suspended its 9-month strike after it reached an agreement with the federal government. The health sector has also witnessed frequent industrial actions that involve all categories of health workers. Sadly, however, the strikes almost always result in the closure of public healthcare institutions, preventing Nigerians access to quality healthcare services. The private sector is not left out, as unions such as the Petroleum Tanker Drivers, an arm of the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, National Union of Road Transport Operators, as well as the National Union of Electricity Employees, have embarked on strike actions on several occasions, with associations such as the Non-Academic Staff Union and the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities threatening to embark on an industrial action. What factors are responsible for the frequent industrial actions? Also, with the attendant socio-economic implications on the economy, how can these actions be mitigated? Guest on Good Morning Nigeria will speak to these and more shortly.
All right, with us here in the Abuja studios to begin this conversation, let's welcome a regular face in Good Morning Nigeria. That's Comrade Issa Aramu, Vice President, Industrial Global Union, and a member of the National Institute. Comrade Issa, pleasure to have you this morning.
Good morning, Kingsley.
Okay. Morning. Right. Also, part of this conversation, the former General Secretary of the Nigerian Labour Congress is joining us via Zoom, Dr. Peter Ozueson. Dr. Ozueson, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And also joining us from Benin studio is Professor Richard Idobo, former Dean, Faculty of Law, University of Benin, with focus on labor laws and industrial relations. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Pleasure. Good morning.
Morning.
All right, gentlemen, of course, you listened to our background report by correspondent, and we are all witnesses to the obviously unstable industrial climate in the country. I'm not sure there's any season that passes by without reports of one union embarking on industrial action or one calling off its industrial action. While ASU was rounding off his own industrial action, the non-academic staff were threatening to proceed on that, and indeed they had a 3-day warning strike. When the name to SIM linkage was also announced, suddenly you saw the Union of NIMC workers, that's to say the National Identity Management Commission, also embarking on an industrial action and disrupting the registration process for persons who had not received their national identification numbers. On and on, the country's industrial landscape is obviously not a pleasant one. Comrade Issa Aramu, why are we in this situation?
Well, Kingsley, once again, and through you, let me say good morning, Nigerians. I watch your background tape, and it's very instructive about what seems to be where we are in terms of the state of work relations in Nigeria. But I would have expected, for us to have informed discussion. It would have been useful to get some data. I think that that's also the problem, the crisis we're having in the labor market. I could recollect in the 70s, in the 80s, even up to 90s, the then Bureau of Statistics, which is now National Bureau of Statistics, it used to be Office of National Statistics, but now Bureau of MBS, Bureau of Statistics, used to churn out figures in which we know about not just the workers who are employed, those sorts of jobs, but about the labor disputes. Then I also recollect that the annual report of the Central Bank of Nigeria used to have a specific section on industrial relations. But that was a country where labor was taken serious as an important factor of production, as an important factor of development. But nowadays it's easier to get the data about what's going on in the capital market, about land, other factor of production, but you don't get what is going on in the labor market as such. But Kingsley, I agree with you. I mean, if we have to use some guesswork from the report you have given, you mentioned the crisis we have in the universities, as well, just suspended 9-month-long strikes, and then now you have the SANU and NASU, I think so, the non-academic staff union, they are also up with their legitimate claims, in the world of work. Of course, you also have the names which you mentioned, the National Identity Management Registration Council. We can be on and on. Don't forget that resident doctors went on strike June last year. even at the height of the pandemic, in that order. But what I'm saying is it would be nice to have the data so that we can do comparative analysis, as it were. But we take it that what you call incessant. My only concern about when you talk of incessant strike is that whenever we have industrial harmony, when there was no strike, nobody knew what unions are doing. Unions only know whenever there is work stoppage. Other sectors are on now. Aviation, I've not heard of anything going on. A lot of unions in the private sectors, there was, industry, food and beverages, construction, they are working out. That will not be news. Nobody will talk of incessant industrial money.
Industrial action.
It's only when there are actions that we make noise. But that also increases the importance of labor. And I think that whoever or any country that ignores labor as an important factor of production, or I don't even want to use factor of production as an important, partner in development process. You only have to know whenever workers stop working, and I think that's the point. But if you ask me, I think the increasing level of dispute that we're having, Dubois, I think it has to do with what I want to call crisis of compensation. In the world of work. And if you look at the statistics, increasingly, the share of wage income in national economy is going down drastically. The inequitable distribution of resources, in which the working men and women, the more you work, the poorer you are. In fact, we are talking of working poor. I could recollect in the 70s, 80s, as a student of economics, all we are told is that once you get a job, you're on the march towards poverty, and it's clear. I mean, you have stable income, and with your income, you can improve on it. You also use it to increase your purchasing power. I mean, that's what they call effective demand in economics. But increasingly now, with rising inflation, with devaluation of currency, workers' pay can hardly take them home, as the normal cliche is all about. Take the case of names, for instance. It's bad enough for you to have a manual decision to say you want to do re-registration of the citizens in a pandemic. I mean, for me, I don't know what is the urgency. You want to carry out reform, government should also learn to space reform, or managers should space. But it's okay, that's bad enough. But it's also worse enough not to give them protective equipment. Many of their allowances are not paid. And what do you expect? So there is the way labor has been treated in that sector generally leads to more conflict. You also have the frontline workers, and I think the named workers are more or less frontline workers. You have the medical doctors, nurses. The media. Of course, the media. I mean, where you go through. I mean, you have to everyday educate us on the need to obey the protocols and code. But you must take care of those working men and women. They must be well motivated. Now, you don't pay them on time. There's no. And then I could collect even the case of the crisis in universities. Looking at the demands of the non-academic staff, it includes non-payment of arrears of minimum wage, which has been long concluded. So when you have that crisis of compensation, of course you must expect there will be. In fact, I want to say that if you take serious crisis of compensation in the public sector, clearly we are still having industrial money. Because I expect more of this conflict. Because what do the workers live on? What do the working men live? They live on their pay. And if you don't pay them, it becomes a crisis. So I want to say that is one. Then the second quick point I want to underscore here, and I think that's the second one before we return back to the discussion, is that I think what you call the certain crisis, of course, is that we must know that if we define labor as a factor of production, it's a special factor. Because labor is not a commodity, it's human beings. It has aspirations. You need to nurture it, you need to motivate it, you need to engage in discussion with it, dialogue. And in most cases, some of the conflict we have is that we have abandoned dialogue. Instead of social dialogue, we have monologue, in which you just announce, measures and say workers should take them, regardless of under the conditions they work. So we have to return to active social dialogue, collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is that we have to have interest accommodation. Workers and employers have to come together to discuss, and there must be collective agreement. And when you have an agreement must be obeyed. There should be sanctity of collective agreement. And I think you find that in the universities. I mean, the major factor in the crisis between ASU and the federal government has been that you have an agreement, or we want to call it memorandum of understanding, which is more obeyed in the breach, than in compliance. I'm from private sector. I just retired from textile union, and we've signed collective agreement close to 45, in the past 40 years, which means every year we go for negotiation. In fact, my successor, they just concluded another agreement, but you didn't see any drama because we have already collective agreement that makes it possible periodically to review agreement. Now, once it's signed, because it's collective outcome, you must obey it. It's binding. It's completely binding. But of course, there may be problem of implementation. That's why in the modern collective agreement, you also have a room for what they call reopener clause, which means each of the party, in spite of what you've agreed upon, you can reopen. But again, it's through discussions, negotiation, no unilateralism. So management or employers should not take unilateral action. So also the working people should not do so. But this discussion we're having about the crisis of labor, and I think NTA is to mainstream the importance of labor in national development.
Okay, Comrade Ahumu, thank you for your opening comments there. Let's now join Dr. Peter Ozo Esson, former NLC General Secretary. You've had our opening statement here from Comrade Ahumu, continuous industrial action in Nigeria. But Comrade Ahumu also says we are also having industrial harmony. Do you think so?
Well, thank you very much. Let me say that I'm having challenges with the quality of audio, so I'm not following very clearly what is the discussion going on in the studio. It breaks on and off. However, I think that the topic before us is a very crucial one that we need to come to grips with if the economy is actually to advance and if the nation is to advance. From my own experience, I think that we will notice that the frequency of strikes have usually been greater in two major sectors, the educational sector and the health sector. And I know there are strikes in other sectors, petroleum and all that, but these two sectors have become systematic in terms of the frequency of occurrence of industrial actions. And I think that it is for us to try to understand why. And I believe that there are two major reasons accounting for the frequency of industrial actions, particularly in these two sectors. Number one is the failure of industrial relations practice largely on the part of government. Because you see, when you go and you have a collective agreement, you agree through a process of negotiation. If you do not then regard the terms of the agreement as binding, and therefore something that you must commit to implementing, then you are going to have violations leading to frequent shutdowns and frequent industrial actions. So I think that in the first place, we need professionalized industrial relations, particularly in the government sector, to deal with these issues. The second major reason, particularly for these two sectors, is the contestation within the sectors themselves. If you take the educational sector, for instance, there seems to now be, I think since 1993, there seems to now be a continuous struggle within the unions and the various categories of workers in the sector. ASU versus NASU versus Senior Staff Association and all that. And I think that in the same way, in the educational sector, the rivalry or the contestations among doctors, nurses, other medical staff personnel and all that have created in these sectors a system that is innately unstable and that will continue to lead to some of these disturbances and strikes. I therefore think that it is crucial that we must rise up to the challenge and find a way to address and put to rest these various rivalries. Luckily, these sectors are not new to Nigeria. They are not unique to Nigeria. They exist in other countries. And I think that there are generally the scientific way of dealing with some of the issues of rivalry. And it's through job evaluation and all that. But even when you do not have the wherewithal to carry out full-scale evaluation, job evaluation, I think that we need to engage the various unions to come to a commitment so that maybe a technical committee can look at what is happening in those sectors in a number of best practicing countries and use those to fashion out a mechanism to address these issues. I think it is only when we are able to do those two things, professionalize industrial relations and keep to the spirits of agreements, and also ensure that we put to rest these rivalries through a scientific method of determining whatever, whether they are relativities, whether they are relationships in these sectors. It is only then we will start to address and bring about a more orderly industrial relations. I just thought I should say that as an opening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Peter Ozoeson, for your opening salvo. Let's go over to our Benin Network Center, where we earlier introduced Professor Richard Dubois, who is the former Dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Benin. He, of course, has a special focus on labor and industrial law, and had earlier worked in the Labor Office. Professor Richard Dubois, our presumption is that the economy has been battered by frequent work stoppages. What is your view and what is happening?
Thank you. There's no doubt about that at all. For a country to survive economically, it ought to have a very stable industrial peace. Industrial peace for progress. When there is anarchy and disorder from the workforce, no nation can survive. No nation can survive. I think that is the reason ILO came into being in 1919, to tidy up things from the odd ends and to ensure, set the necessary machinery in motion with a view to dispute resolution apart from all else. But let's get it clear. A lot has been said about the sources, the two major sources that have been posing quite a problem in the area of frequent industrial action. If I got it clearly, educational sector, and then the health sector. But to that must be added the energy sector, by which I mean petroleum sector. Now, the position has been this. The major desire of the employer is to have increased turnover on investment. And I'm creating a category here. The private sector, and then the public sector I will address soonest. And the private sector, the ardent desire of the employer is to, guarantee increased turnover on investment. And then that will stabilize his own ability to maximize his profit. On the other hand, we have the workforce, whose ardent desire is to have take-home pay that will actually take them home. Between these attitudes, there is very little compromise. For a country like ours, sandwiched between global ailing economy and the natural aspirations of the people, the citizenry. The workers are not to be left out at all. They have yearnings. They feel want with every new day. With any thoughtless economic policy by those who are responsible for it, it agitates the minds of the workers. With the private sector, things appear to be healthier. I don't know of any chaos in the education system as it relates to private sector. I don't know of any university in the private sector that goes on strike, where workers go on strike. Recently, we were told that federal government has about 40 or 48 universities, and the bulk of the higher institutions are in the private sector. If that is so, it means federal government, or by which I mean all governments, are having few areas of problem to manage. But the major problem is this. Government relies on anachronistic method of salary fixation. You take it or go to hell. That is what government has been doing over the years. We believe that this is not the way forward. For government to fail to understand that it has its role as an employer and therefore in a position to sit up and do it in the same way as the private sector does, is to miss the mark. Government as a sovereign, yes. And then we have government as an employer. But when government as a sovereign does not want to act as an employer, simplicity, we have chaos. Let's get it clear once again. A situation that allows the honorable minister, my minister, to descend into the arena and become a party to negotiation does not augur well for the healthy industrial peace. What are we expecting from that kind of arrangement? The traditional position, which is still extant, backed by law of the country, is that Ministry of Labor will act as arbiter. And then the parties to employment relations are there. It is in the place of Ministry of Labor to now mediate, contribute, etc., guide the parties. And the workers will have confidence in such an arrangement. If at the end of the negotiation, agreement is struck, it ought to be honored. But we must quickly underline it. As it is now, the common law position is in place in Nigeria. The common law position has been amplified by the Supreme Court in Nigeria to the effect that agreements are not by themselves enforceable. They are still regarded as gentleman agreement unless something is done to give effect to it. The parties who are negotiating must have indicated that they truly intend to be bound by that agreement. If that is so, government will not capitalize on that position, which is awkward for it. Capitalizing on the fact that the traditional position in Britain and in Nigeria is that agreements are to be regarded as gentleman agreement. A professor of repute told the whole world of Nigeria some years ago, 1992, is that the agreement that ASU entered into was at best a contract of imperfect obligation, and that will operate to injure the psyche of a body like ASU, which is a research body, simplicity, that knows it in all, so to put it. And if a government allows itself to go ahead to honor the agreements that it has reached with the workforce in the breach rather than in its observance, we are to expect chaos. Agreements are to be respected. Pacta sunt servanda. Whether the Supreme Court has taken a position in that regard or not, pacta sunt servanda is a cliche which ought to endure to the advantage of all that have genuinely entered into an agreement. I'm happy to come out with this, and I'm not standing for anybody, any group, but I believe, as all ought to have it, that before long, if the National Assembly is to perfect what is before it this very moment, we would have tidied up things from the odd ends. I happen to have taken part in that tripartite arrangement aimed at bringing about laws to change the old order and bring about the new order. And when that one is in place and they are effectuated, there won't be anarchy and disorder such as we have this very moment. The private sector, we must give kudos to the private sector. The public sector, it is not the fault of ASU that they are constantly on strike. It is premised on the fact that government as an employer has failed to honor, respect that position of government as an employer. Rather, it is relying on the state power, so to put it, government as a sovereign.
Well, Professor Richard Dubois, that's the point exactly I would like you to clarify. You made it earlier, you just stated it now that, look, part of the conflict we are facing in the industrial sector, in this case now the public sector, is government as a sovereign versus government as an employer. Let's use the illustration of ASU, and this is often very confusing to those who are observers of the industrial scene with regard to ASU. Who is the employer of university lecturers? Isn't it supposed to be the governing councils of each of the universities? And assuming that the appointments are statutorily flavored, in which case you now link it back to the act setting up those federal universities, why does it also appear that there's a conflation? Federal university staff are on strike because their earned allowances and arrears have not been paid, and in solidarity, because NLC used to say then, injury to one is injury to all. So state university lecturers also join the strike when the state governments are not owing them, or the terms of their employers are different. People just keep wondering, so how do you reconcile this whole idea of a sovereign or a sub-sovereign and then an employer not willing to be bound by the obligations they have entered into? Show that we have an industrial landscape.
The point must be made here. We have one union that caters for academic staff all over the country. I'm, however, worried that ASU has not been able to extend its arms to the private sector to mobilize workers there. But it is satisfied with mobilizing the workers in the state university. Probably that is because it is a government all the same. ASU ought to expand its service. ASU is behaving to me like a hen that has lost some of the chicks and will not want to recover them. So ASU can expand, so that if we are grounding the education, it will be grounded for all purpose. But I am not an anarchist. Coming back to what you have said, because in Nigeria only one union is responsible for the proper care of all the members of academic staff, there's no way they cannot mobilize workers in the state. It is essentially the responsibility of government, federal government, to fund education. Fund education, because everywhere we are talking about egalitarian society. I don't know of any country that would do without education. A third world country like ours, where the manpower is important, federal government ought to be forthcoming to fill the gap that is left behind by the state. The state lecturers are feeling the brunt in the same way as the federal lecturers are feeling the brunt. So we must not be blinded by the fact that they are state, but there is one union responsible for all of them. So, and they are also holding appointments that are statutory or tingled with statutory flavor. There's no doubt about that at all. So we are saying that government ought to come in and negotiate. They receive the same salary. Let's get it. The same salary structure in the public sector, just like we have the civil servants. The same salary structure in the federal civil service is the same salary structure in the state civil service. They operate, they have one body in common, the national body where they cross-fertilize, ATC. So in the same way, the unions in the private sector, in the states, the workers in the state universities are necessarily part and parcel of the feelings which their colleagues in the federal universities have. They feel what? They are in the same state, more or less. Federal university like Uniben, we have federal university in Benin City in Edo State. We have state university in Edo State, where I'm talking from now. We have state university. And they are in the same area, imparting knowledge to our people. It doesn't discriminate on the basis of whether you are in the state or in the federal. And to that extent, we must look at their interest as being one that is held in common. We cannot run away from it without doing violence to the interests of education in Nigeria. So, federal government has a responsibility to tidy up things from the odd ends. Send people to mobilize the National Assembly to come out with the laws that I'm talking about now. A totally different situation we would have had to put matters in perspective, so that there won't be anarchy and disorder. There won't be everyday strike action. That is as far as it relates to the academic staff. But what happens to the the workers in another sector, like the health sector? What is government doing about it, whether state government or federal government? The health sector, if you ask me, if you are to pay and you have no money to pay, but you just want to pay some persons, I would prefer you use my money to pay the doctors first, because of the very nature and quality of the service. Without the doctors, for heaven's sake, we would not survive when the chips are down. I would prefer, even though I'm not saying that I will go a hungry man, I would prefer, that gives you my mindset in this area. We are not to toy with the fate of medical doctors. And medical doctors are also not to take advantage of this otherwise purposive thinking aimed at reducing their pain and promoting their pleasure. Things must be put in place. Medical doctors actually have no trade union within the context of the registered trade unions in Nigeria. We don't have it. Go and find out. Kinsley, you are a lawyer. Go and find out. You will see that they are excluded. In 1978, they were excluded for no known justification. So they operate anyway to negotiate, and when the chips are down, you can say that they don't have any legal status for negotiating. So my sympathy again goes to them for that reason. We must do everything to tidy up things from the odd end, so that doctors, medical practitioners will not find it attractive to go on strike from time to time. They ought to exhaust the machinery, the domestic machinery method of trade dispute resolution. But they are not encouraged. There is a law to the effect that you cannot now give any notice. Go to the Trade Disputes Act, the Extant Trade Dispute Act. Whereas when it was promulgated in 1976, they would, if you must go on strike, you will give notice, irrespective of the fact that you are precluded. You must still give notice. But that again, by 1977, was suspended for the life of that Trade Disputes Emergency Provisions Decree, which is at this very moment. It was suspended under Section 10. That provision was suspended. But workers are still going on strike. When I say workers now, I'm talking about the medical workers. The health workers are still going on strike. So something terrible ought to be done to stifle this. And you are not going to kill the doctors because you want to stifle the source of problem. You are to do what is needful so as to ensure that it is unattractive for them to go on strike. Nip discontent, complaint, or grievance, because these are the various stages. Discontent at the shop floor level, complaint, when not effectively resolved, it can graduate into grievance, and an unsettled grievance metamorphoses into a trade disputes, which if not skillfully managed, will blossom into a full-scale trade industrial action.
Dr. Peter Ozo-Esson, thank you. So you've raised a lot of... Professor Richard Udomo, sorry, you've raised some pertinent questions that we'll get back to you on that, but now we'll come back to the studio where Comrade Aremo is seated. It all boils down from the respondents we've had now. It all boils down to the mechanism put in place for resolving matters. Are they effective enough?
Well, before I react to your question on the mechanisms, I think the point I tried to raise before is that we should also look at the context under which we're having these disputes. And it's clear that, two sectors had captured our imaginations because, of course, maybe the affect us so much. I'm talking of education and health. But you discover that most sectors of the economy are having crisis of compensation, which I've already raised before. And even the two sectors that we are talking about, health and education, I mean, Dr. Peter will bear with me that in those days, for academicians to even belong to the union was somehow unthinkable. I mean, they used to have loose association of professionals who could get together. You know, but it was conditioned, as they say, that make crayfish to bend. Of course, with declining funding for education, with poor allocation to education, and poor remuneration for the lecturers, they saw the need to become, you know, full-blown trade unions. Of course, also affiliated to Nigerian Labour Congress in 1986. The same thing with the doctors. I mean, nobody will ever assume doctors could go on strike. Even nurses, you know, they used to be treated as essential services and well paid, well remunerated. I mean, that was when Nigeria used to allocate resources to educate. And I think Professor Richard touched on that. I think we must look at the context to see, you know, regardless of the details of how the little resources are shared, as we announced in the education sector, as we said, this is what they want to have this on the agreement. Non-academic said this should be allocated to them, some 42 billion. I think it is clear that we should come to the consensus that we need more funding of public sector, you know, namely the health and education, because you can only quarrel on what is not enough. You know, even when it comes to relativity. The same to the energy sector. I mean, you know the crisis we're having in the energy sector, the funding of, you know, power plants, you know, and even to pay the workers when you move from private, I mean, public NEPA to privatized enterprise. It's still the areas of compensation for the workers. So I think that's the point I would. But I also agree with you, Jimmy, that even with the best of funding for this sector, there will always be conflict in the world of work. And that's why we have industrial relation machinery that has been put in place. Nigeria is as robust industrial relation machinery framework. We've signed the core conventions dealing with collective bargaining, Convention 87 of the ILO. There's also the right to organize, you know, which made unions to be in existence in a good number of sectors, you know, and wherever this collective bargaining framework is in place, it doesn't mean there won't be crisis, even from the sector I came from, but there's a way to resolve them. And I think this is what is lacking now. And I think Dr. Peter put it, professionalization. I want to say what we need, the institutionalization of collective bargaining process, as we have in most private sector. Here, you have to have a negotiating machinery in which the employers represented by their, you know, association, unions by their, I mean, we represented the workers, we collectively bargain, have an agreement, we tenor to 2 years, 3 years, open to renewal, and I've also raised the issue of what you call the European clause. Now, this is what likely is a bit lacking. And I think if you also have that, you must also respect the spirit of your agreement. There should be sanctity of agreement, and that we can see now, that's likely the crisis we have in this sector. So I think we need to put those institutions in place. Now, but also with the best of those institutions, we also need best practices on the part of the actors. I think Peter was on dot to say government must respect collective agreement, and absolutely I'm for that. I mean, agreement that is not respected is in vain, and you shouldn't reach an agreement to buy peace, which in turn leads to chaos later. I mean, most of our agreement is that at the heat of the crisis, people say, call up the strike, let's quickly have an agreement. In fact, that's what they call sweetheart agreement, which is for now, when you know that you can't meet the obligations, you know, based on what the issues are. But also, let me also not talk to ourselves, you know, because I'm a unionist myself, and I think all of us need to reform the entire bargaining structures. And it's not just the government or employer that you must change, even we too must change. I'm talking of the organized labor. And what I mean by this, I've been making this point, we must revive what the bargaining structures in each of the sectors. Then there's also the National Advisory Labor Council, you know, which is institutionalized, which is made up of tripartite agents. What I mean, namely employers, government, and labor. That institution used to work very well. So most of the issues will be proactively thought about, you know, and like the point Dr. Peter was raising, what he called rivalries between the unions, between the workers themselves. I mean, even though I don't want to call it rivalry, maybe there are specific work-related problems, because lecturers are different from non-academic. I mean, lecturers are supposed to be the core staff. Well, even though it's debatable now, non-academic are supposed to be what they are doing, supporting staff. Again, they work together, just like doctors and nurses work together. I think what the National Advisory Council could do is to have a platform for us to discuss the issues of relativity, different concerns that would be specific to each sector workers, but they should be able to work in a way that there will be solidarity, there will be cooperation. So that, because we see once we operate separately, we will not get the results the way we should get them.
Yes. Thank you very much for the points you have raised. Yes. I was going to go back to, I was going to go to just pause. You've made some very valuable points. I wanted to elaborate further.
Okay.
Reforming the entire bargaining process, reviving the National Advisory Labour Council, and then dealing with intra-union rivalries. When you look at the political landscape and the rise of rival unions or rival associations, are we not dealing with some very intense power play? I could see you were virtually stuttering, trying to say, academic ASU, they are core staff, NASU, they are supposed to be support staff. Yeah. But they will tell you, the argument we've heard in recent years is the NASU and SANU will say, fine, you are core staff, but see, and let us see how you will function. Without us, you can't survive. I mean, the system cannot survive. Doctors will say, well, they are the lead in the healthcare profession. Nurses will tell you, fine, let us see how you can perform our own roles. Lab technologists will come and tell you, say, let us see how you perform. But we don't seem to have this kind of, permit this expression, this chaotic rivalry in other jurisdictions, which is what Dr. Peter Azoeson was talking about. So how come now we are having this intense power play that fractionalizes the entire environment and makes the labor landscape, so unpleasant to even take a look at?
Yeah, Kingsley, excellent. I mean, you put it better, even though you flow better, because I'm not sure that you are unionized or not. But the point I want to raise here is that I was talking of attitude of the actors in the industrial relation system. One of them, the point I quickly want to raise is that you see, even with our frustration with strikes have visible expression of the grievances of the workforce. I mean, if you don't want strike, I don't think you want to try the alternative, which we have witnessed during the SARS, which is endless. You don't know the leaders, you don't know who's talking. Organized strike gives the notice. We want to go on strike. I mean, as NASU and SANU have done now, they give the notice, we want to go on strike. Secondly, they talk of warning strike. Am I communicating? Before they go into definite. And I think ASU normally do similarity, even though at times some of the warning strike, you don't know the difference in terms of tenor. But what I'm saying is that they give the notice. Now, you expect the government or the relative, I mean, whoever is the agent, ministry in charge, to respond in time. You don't need to, quickly come from meetings only when the strike have started. That's the point I'm raising about the attitude. Now, about the rivalries, which you talk about rivalry, I didn't want to use that. Even there would be contestation in the world of work. Just like in this studio, I mean, the reporter, those who undo the camera, but it's complementarity to make the world of work possible. I mean, the sector where I came from, we have the same thing. In fact, they were divided based on seniority. They talk of senior staff, junior staff. And at times I used to know in those days, even employers, they have senior staff toilet, junior staff toilet, as if what we do in toilet is different. It's about this class issue to divide and possibly rule. Now, the challenge is to work at an arrangement. Am I communicating through a bargaining system that, yes, specific demands, but we're united to solve the problem collectively? Because if you don't do that, you return back to it. And I think in the case of education sector, my quick suggestion would be that let's apply the spirit of collective bargaining. It's collective, not unilateral. Am I communicating? We've seen the the crisis now of unilateral discussions, in which when you finish with ASU, it return back to the non-academic. As the case may be, let's have a framework in which collectively there will be some fundamental understanding, to discuss from the one, so that even if there are disputes, they are collectively resolved, not in piecemeal. And I think in petroleum sector, it has worked very well. Pengasan, Pengasan did this with the senior that they try to come together to discuss collectively in that respect, but with the best of effort. Kingsley, the point I want to raise is that there will always be disputes, and if there are disputes, there should be a way to resolve them. Now to the unions, that's the way I want to talk of self-criticisms on this. Wait. We can go on strikes. That's legitimate. We have the right to strike, and our unions are clear. In fact, you know, strikes. Take the police for instance. They can't go on strike. They don't bargain, but they do another strike on the road, which you call collective bargaining, as the case may be. We thought the attendant crisis for all of us. So I think it's legitimate to go on that strike, Kingsley. But however, there are routes of engagement. After I give notice, you see, for me, I feel completely worried. 1 day strike, 2 day strike, 3 day strikes. I'm not communicating. 9-month strikes. If somebody asked me and I was a bit sarcastic, I said, that sounds like insurgency, right? That's right. Because and then in the process, work stops. I'm not communicating. I think this violation is to be serious, not to be too serious, but it's not to blame the workers on strike. No, I'm saying all the parties should know that when universities are closed down, our future is in peril. Student education is affected. We can't catch up in terms of solving the crisis of skill development as we have in the country. And there are two kinds of dispute also: dispute of rights, dispute of interest. Dispute of right is based on already existing agreement. You should pay me certain salary when I work. You don't pay me. You don't even need that agreement. You can go on strike with that. But dispute of interest, you are looking for new things. I'm not communicating. You are funding. I've been in the campaign for revival of textile industry for almost 20 years now. I'm closely, but you know that in doing so, we don't say we are going to close or declare strike in the existing factories. I'm not communicating, even as we are fighting smuggling, as we are asking for made in Nigerian textile patronage, as we are talking of implementation of executive order 003, and also, so you need a different approach also. I'm not communicating, so you don't apply endless strike for things that you can put more pressure on campaigning or lobby. This may not be palatable with some of us who are in the sector, but what I'm saying is that for every prolonged stoppages, all of us are losers. In fact, in the private sector, if you go on strike, workers lose some incomes. There are some daily pay allowances which you lose them. So workers will be there to say, wait, Comrade President, we need to relook at this thing because we're already losing income. But what I'm going to say is that let's look for framework to prevent unnecessary stoppages. But if it happens, let's have a way to handle them in a creative way that will not be mutually destructive. The education sector now, ASU has finished. Now we're going to a new round of, and it's solvable. And I think that's the area we should discuss next time. What should be the solution? And I think before SANU we proceed another one, let there be proper discussion going on, and as long as discussions are going on, everybody should operate in a way that.
Thank you very much. You were saying NASU SANU, the president of NASU sat there a couple of weeks ago when we had him on Good Morning Nigeria, and we raised this was a byproduct of our conversation, and they were saying that nobody is listening to them, so that the language the government understands the strike.
Also bad attitude.
All right, so we'll return to some of these other aspects. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now, and then the conversation continues.
Although social media as a channel of communication is inherently harmless, it becomes harmful and damaging when used without discretion and thoughtfulness. Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, reflect, and verify information before sharing it. Be a good social media user. Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source and use social media responsibly for a better Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in collaboration with the National Orientation Agency. The Council of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the game changer, His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State. Broadcasting in a digital economy, Maxwell Logo gives an insight. This edition also features Nancy Naji of AIT, a name synonymous with business. Meet the NCDC boss, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also x-rays the relevance of social media in the modern society. Meet some TV professionals who have impacted their spaces and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's go back to the former General Secretary of the NLC, Dr. Peter Ozoeson, who is still with us via Zoom. Dr. Ozoeson, there are a number of points that are on the table, but I just want to draw your attention to at least two of them. One you raised, the other also raised by Comrade Disa Aremo. Comrade Disa Aremo talked about the crisis of compensation in the world of work as a primary driver of the kind of industrial actions that the country has witnessed in recent years, if not in recent decades. And then on your own, you also talk about the need to professionalize industrial relations. Now, an offshoot of that, I would like to make a comment on either of them, but an offshoot of not professionalizing industrial relations. Part of what we have seen, and I think one of the three guests also touched on this, you say collective agreements are intended, of course, to be honored. Once you see the terms, everybody goes home and says, well, this is a right now. At some point, we expect our rights to be respected. But isn't it also the case that we find that those who are negotiating on behalf of government assume that they have a gun placed to their head, and therefore, no, this strike has gone on for so long, what quick deals can we make? So they make the deals without recourse to the long-term implications or even the capacity of government to honor its obligation. And then going forward, you find that we are back again to square one, crisis and then chaos. What needs to be done in terms of getting real professional industrial relations practitioners? There's a labor institute in Lorry, I believe. That's the Makemodu Labor Institute. How well are our labor negotiators, whether on the part of the unions or the part of government, getting the required training? Well, my question, if Dr. Ozoeson, can you hear me now?
It's not hearing.
Well, if you can't hear me, I want to go over to our Benin Network Center. I'm going to pose the same question to Professor Richard Dubois. Professor Richard Dubois, in terms of negotiations, government negotiators, often sometimes take the stance that they have a gun placed to their head, and so quickly and rapidly, and also because on account of public pressure, the strike has gone on for so long, whether medical doctors, resident doctors, people are dying in hospitals, so look, let's strike this deal very quickly. There is a perception that there isn't sufficient training on industrial relations, whether in negotiations or otherwise. And I said there's supposed to be a Michael Imodu Labor Institute in Ilorin, Kwara State. How much of training goes on and that you are aware of, and what more would you like to see?
Michael Imodu Institute of Labor Relations is doing a lot on this score to educate the minds of those who will go out there to negotiate. But the problem is fundamental. We inherited the Westminster model of voluntarism from Britain, a common law position there. If there is no statute to clearly lay down the position of the law that will make it incumbent on the parties to comply, as it were, there will be difficulty, except we resort to Section 3, Section 5, Section 7, Section 9 of the Trade Disputes Act as we presently have it. By the way, the position that seems to haunt enforceability here, which is not the problem of those negotiating, derives from Justice Lane's position. An agreement such as this, composed largely of optimistic aspirations, presenting grave practical problems of enforcement, and reached against the background of opinion adverse to enforceability, are, in my judgment, not contracts in the legal sense and are not enforceable at law. Our Supreme Court did not hesitate to imbibe this wholesale. In Chukwuma and Shell BP here in Nigeria, where our Supreme Court said an extraneous agreement not entered into by parties to collective agreement cannot be the basis of an action unless it is incorporated into the contract of employment of individual worker. How many people know what incorporation by reference is? I am not sure that is taught at Michael Imodu Institute. It takes more than that. Incorporation by reference will cure this defect that we are talking about. If you are running away from incorporation by reference, the easy way out is contained in the statute that I drew attention to a moment ago. That is why I'm particularly worried that my minister descends into the arena. My minister is to receive it. Negotiated agreements are to be forwarded to the minister, who will endorse. And by the time he endorses, he shall issue a statement by an order published in the Gazette, make it effective and binding on the employer and the workers. I'm underlining the workers to whom that agreement relates. But if you say on the employer and the union, it cannot inure to the advantage of the worker. That was the bane in Chukwuma and Shell BP, where Dr. Chukwuma could not benefit from a negotiated agreement. But it is with us. The Michael Imodu Institute, I am not saying they are not knowledgeable enough, but these are technical issues, actually technical. Do they get the right quality of persons to impact this into their norm score? So it is not an all-common affair. That is why I agree with, to a large extent, with Dr. Ozoeson. So when we are institutionalizing this, it takes more than just calling out persons. You also have to look at the lawyers who are experts in all these areas, so as to illuminate the point and drive the matter clearer home. It is not an all-common affair. And if we continue to hold tenaciously to the native intelligence dictate that, okay, people have negotiated, it should be given effect to, crafty employers will rely on these provisions that I am talking about now. Supreme Court of Nigeria, nothing could be higher than Supreme Court of Nigeria. But I am happy that NLC President, with whom I have related on this score, and we did something together for the benefit of the entire country, we have gone beyond that. It's now waiting for the National Assembly to tidy up things. I drew attention to it a moment ago from the odd end. By the time the laws are, the bills are passed and signed into law, I am sure we will have a different approach. Kingsley, sir, let's get it. We're talking about the rights, statutory employment rights and non-statutory employment rights. Remo said something a moment ago, much of his mind. We have three categories of dispute, but he pointed to two. Three categories of dispute. Dispute of rights, dispute of interest, and then dispute of recognition. For the very first time in 2005, our law came to recognize one aspect of these three categories of disputes, and that is disputes of interest. And the law now says there shall be no right to strike in all other areas except when the issue in contention is dispute of interest, during which time the union can, at a meeting of every member of the union, elect to go on strike or not to go on strike. Tacitly, that has given a leeway, and government that is not willing to pay any of these rights, statutory employment rights and non-statutory employment rights, to dilly-dally before the budget is passed for the next session, we use delay tactics here and there. You will have to pardon me for being a little too honest, but the basis of reconciliation is truth, and I'm just giving you the position. They dilly-dally, and then the next moment they delay. Do you know that academic staff and non-academic staff in universities, they have not been paid the arrears of their deriving from the national minimum wage up till now? What was galvanized into fruition in April 1919? They still have not paid, and that constitutes dispute of interest. And when workers go on strike, when the academic and non-academic staff of Unibank go on strike on this score, you are going to say incessant strike, and who is responsible for this delay? Your guess is as good as mine. I don't want to appear to be hard on my employer, but the truth must be said. Dispute of interest, dispute of right, dispute of recognition, they are there.
Professor Richard Dubois, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. A couple of times in the course of your intervention, you've said, look, my employer. Who is your employer? I asked that question earlier. Are you employed by the Federal Ministry of Education, or are you employed by President Muhammadu Buhari, or you are employed by the Governing Council of the University of Benin? I thought we had gone over this. There are some of the points that we need to clarify. We keep saying my employer, my employer. We know all the linkages, but we will have the opportunity of returning to that, I believe, at some point. Let's go back to Dr. Peter Ozoeson. Dr. Ozoeson, I presume that you didn't hear the question I framed twice before we went over to Professor Richard Dubois. I was saying two things. One, the crisis of compensation in the world of work, which Comrade Saremo spoke about earlier, and said, look, rate of inflation, exchange rate, and just general uncertainty is part of what we find agitating workers, and they, of course, making demands, and when those demands are not met, you find work stoppages. And on your part, you earlier also spoke about the failure of industrial relations practice and the need to therefore professionalize. I was asking, in the latter regard, what is the Michael Imodu Institute of Labor Relations doing, and what could it do more for not just unionists, but also for government negotiators? Peter also warned us earlier that he was having issues with the audio. It doesn't appear to have an earpiece on. Our engineers. All right, Dr. Ison, can you hear us now? All right. Well, we have to come back to our studios, and then Comrade Saremo, the number of the points have been touched on. Just one issue that I would also like us to address. We are witnesses, we are in the labor market, and then we see what goes on. Things have changed in recent decades. It appears that as our nation's economic challenges have grown in proportion, so have a number of employers tended also to take workers for granted. How do we overcome this?
Yeah, and I think that's very unfortunate, Kingsley, because, you know, again, we're in a pandemic period, and it is clear that this is a virus that is affecting lives, even before livelihood, even though they go together. Now, you need the working men and women. You need to really be prepared, to be motivated, to be able to confront the challenges of life. In this case, the frontline workers, namely doctors, nurses, the medical personnel. Of course, some of you have to also educate those who are in the media. And I think this is what most countries of the world have done. They've made sure they motivate, they protect them. And you can even see now in the case of the lack of proper, protection for the frontline medical workers. Now we are recording casualties. Doctors are being infected. Some even have died. Nurses have died. Now, if those who will protect us are dying, who are we? Who are much more vulnerable for the case will be. So, and even for the livelihood, those who need to work, to still produce goods, especially in the private sector, and services that we need to run the economy, they need to be well motivated and be well paid for. But I'm surprised that under pandemic, for whatever it is, we allow for strikes to happen. I mean, because for obvious reasons, workers are not paid, they are not well motivated. I mean, like the case Professor Richard reminded of all about. I mean, how can somebody still be not paid the arrears of minimum wage at this hour? But maybe because they are the one on strikes, you'll be surprised. It happens in different sectors. Those who have not even gone on strike, they are living with this. Now, I think the point I want to quickly raise, don't forget that we have vision 2020 before. We used to say that by 2020, Nigeria will be one of the leading 20 economies. That has passed us now. I think we have launched another vision 2050, which is now being consummated. You can't drive this vision for development without motivated workforce, well paid, well trained.
The engine room.
The engine room. It is the workforce, that will be able to do so. And that means that salaries should be paid regularly. You must also periodically review them in the light of inflation. I've always been arguing, even our annual budget, look at the budget assumption. They will tell you the price of oil, of crude oil. What will be the benchmark? $80, $100. They tell you what will be the rate of inflation. The exchange rate will be well defined. Now, I also want to know how many jobs will be created. What will be the minimum pay for the workforce? No, those assumptions should be clear. How much will be paid to motivate the workforce. The bottom line is that mainstream the workforce in your development agenda. You don't do so, let me tell you, you can't get productivity. And if you don't have sustained productivity, there can't be development. And even for those who go on strike, Kingsley, those are the ones we see. There are hidden strikes that are not well known. Absenteeism. Am I communicating? Moonlighting.
That's right.
Deliberate sabotage in the world of work. Because they are not well paid.
That is the point. It is not a matter of even just well paid, being well paid.
Yes.
There are organizations where workers, private sector, don't get paid for months on end.
Absolutely. And
then they see their proprietors, that's to say their employers, living lavish lifestyles.
I mean, take the banks for instance. I mean, how can during the height of pandemic some are still retrenching? Meanwhile, they've declared huge profit under this condition. So now I think what we need to do, Kingsley, my suggestion is what I've said before, and I think now we should look for solution. That's the point I'm raising, that we have structures already. Ministry of Labour under Minister Ngige and of course Kiamo, they've been doing a lot of activism. In fact, some of the things they go for negotiation for, I thought shouldn't be their primary concern, because you have the sector ministry, you should handle it, including the councils of university, as the case may be. Of course, when it comes to funding, federal government is involved, they must be involved, but the core people to drive it may not be ministry. But however, I want us to revive the National Labour Advisory Council. I've said so. It's already there, and I think Nigerian Labour Congress, under Comrade Ayuba, has been demanding for that. Because with that one, all the actors can come together, proactively look at all the issues, the issue of job evaluation, relativity, so that we replace rivalries with cooperation among all the actors within the industrial relations system. And with that one, we can minimize, the dispute, which will not lead to work cost stoppages, loss of productivity, and of course,
implementation of agreements too.
Oh, of course, that's clear. Sanctity of collective agreement, that's very clear. And there should be sanctions for non-compliance. You know, I mean, the Minimum Wage Act, for instance, is clear. If you don't pay that minimum wage, there are sanctions for it, including you don't pay the fines, you can be jailed. Employers can be jailed. But all this will not work if all the actors do not see the need to implement them. I mean, let me end up on this note. 1981, that's when we had the first minimum wage. That's the notice of strike and the actual strike didn't last more than 1 day before President Shagari quickly put the machinery in place to get the act passed.
How long does it take to review the minimum wage? How long is it supposed to be? It's
supposed to be periodically every 5 years, but over a time, the thing had lasted decades because nobody, the government that's supposed to drive the agenda simply kept it in abeyance. And honestly, simply you treat your workforce badly, you can't get productivity and you can't get development done. And I think this is what we need to emphasize more than anything else.
You know, yeah, we're going to take our tweets now. I once met, so we're getting pressed for time. I once met a worker in South Africa, and we were discussing. I was in Johannesburg, and I asked him, I said, look, what is your pay like, the regularity? The conversation went on and on. So I then asked him, say, you get your pay on schedule, on time? He said, oh yeah. I said, no, first of all, he was surprised by the question. I mean, I'm familiar with the system. He said, oh yeah, sure. Are you going to tell me that the boss will tell me at the end of the month to say, hey, sorry guys, your pay is not ready? He said, we'll go to court.
Yes.
If you don't get your pay at the end of the month, how are you supposed to pay your mortgage? How are you supposed to pay your health insurance?
And even the minimum wage, I think it just comes automatically because the agreement has already been signed.
And you have this machinery also here. You have industrial arbitration panel. You have the National Industrial Court, which unfortunately now has been taught to full-blown regular courts.
Very quickly, let's take our tweets. General Jack Solomon, strike incidents and prosperity in Nigeria are quite alarming. We recommend that all stakeholders involved in industrial relations should adopt systematic and sustainable mechanisms, including collective bargaining in addition to political solutions towards arresting the embarrassing, insistent and recurrent spate of strikes in Nigeria.
Mutana Farouk, it seems no one cares about the negative effect strikes pose on socio-economic activities. Students who ought to have graduated last year are static, and their zeal for learning may have been truncated.
Leo Fadaka, disruptive frequent industrial actions in Nigeria is embarrassingly counterproductive to overall development. Global best practice must be adopted on labor wages issues, while agreement reached by employers and employees must be sacrosanct.
Martins Dodo, employers of labor must keep to the terms of their agreements. Ministry of Labor must not only be seen to be popular when they are always at the negotiating table, the table should also be used for planning and implementation of budgets and policies.
First is Akimbo Ewa to reduce the frequent industrial actions in our country. Employers, whether in public or private sector, must take the interest of their employees seriously, while the law regulating industrial actions should be diligently enforced to curb the raft of strikes by workers.
Well, this one is coming from Banimas Dynamic. That's the Twitter handle. Government should implement laws that indicate the forfeiture of salaries of striking groups or individuals during the striking period. No work, no pay policy should be enforced to the letter whenever there is a strike.
Steve Bond 007, the government must fulfill their own part of the agreement. That's why there are more and more strikes.
Well, Mark, a tweet said the cause of frequent strike is injustice in the distribution of income in the country. Another cause may be the greed on the part of labor unions that benefits from such strike.
Eno Ayuk Edwin, industrial action has come to stay in Nigeria simply because government at all levels as well as private sector employers have placed leadership gains and huge profit in business over workers' welfare.
All right, so those are the tweets that we can accommodate. It's a subject we have indicated we'll have to return to at some point. Many more perspectives to discuss, including the attitude of labor unions and their leaders themselves, those who want to be seen to be tough and not seen as good boys, say, of the federal government. On that note, we'd like to thank all our guests this morning. We lost Dr. Peter Ozoe-san, whose audio via Zoom went off, former NLC General General Secretary. Regardless, we thank you for your contribution. We also would like to thank Professor Richard Dubois, former Dean, Faculty of Law at University of Benin. He was with us from our Benin Network Center. Thank you very much, Prof. And then here in the Abuja studios, Comrade Ramon, Vice President, Industrial Global, and a member of the National Institute. Comrade Ramon, thanks a lot for being around.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so that does it today for us on Good Morning Nigeria. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Do have a wonderful day.